He saved a woman's life, but then discovered something that changed his life. What if a single choice, made in a moment of darkness, could redefine everything you believe is possible? What if, amidst the rain and chaos of an apparently ordinary night, you encountered someone whose life was intertwined with yours in ways not even fate could foresee? In a dark alley, where the sound of rain echoes like an omen, a young man walks hurriedly, his simple clothes soaked, his tired face illuminated only by the faint glow of a distant lamppost. Suddenly, a scream cuts through the night. He hesitates for a brief moment, but something inside him, perhaps courage, perhaps instinct, pushes him forward. What he finds there is not just a woman in danger, but the beginning of a journey that will challenge everything he knows about himself and the world around him. Junho is a 24-year-old young man whose life is a web of silent sacrifices and dreams kept under lock and key. He lives in a small apartment in the city's peripheral neighborhood, where the streets are narrow and the buildings are worn down by time. Despite the difficulties, there is something unshakable about him: his determination to protect those he loves. His mother, a frail and sick woman, spends her days in a rocking chair near the window, while his younger sister, Mian, dedicates herself to her studies with the hope of becoming a doctor. Junho knows that the family's future depends on him, and for that reason, he works tirelessly to keep them together. Early in the morning, he is at the local restaurant, washing dishes and helping in the kitchen. At night, he trades his apron for a simple uniform and goes out into the dark streets of the city making deliveries for a logistics company. His days are long, tiring, and repetitive, but he never complains. There is a quietness in his gaze that reveals the depth of his thoughts. He dreams of something greater, but does not have the courage to admit it, not even to himself. For Junho, the happiness of others always comes before his own. That night, the sky was laden with black clouds, and the rain fell as if the world itself were collapsing. Junho walked hurriedly along the wet sidewalk, trying to avoid puddles while holding an old bag containing the little that was left from the restaurant's dinner. He barely noticed the biting cold or the weight on his shoulders. He was used to enduring more than that. But then, as he passed through a dark and damp alley, something made him stop. A scream echoed in the darkness, breaking the monotonous sound of the rain. It was a desperate sound, full of fear. Without hesitation, Junho entered the alley. The scene he found was like something out of a nightmare. An elegant woman, dressed in expensive clothes that seemed completely out of place in the decaying environment, was surrounded by three menacing men. They spoke loudly, their rough voices mixed with cruel laughter. The woman trembled, visibly frightened, but there was something in her posture that suggested resistance. She was not going to give up easily. Junho felt his heart race. He knew he was at a disadvantage, that facing three men alone could be a fatal mistake. But he also knew he couldn't simply turn his back. Without thinking twice, he advanced, shouting to catch the attackers' attention. The men turned around, surprised to see someone so unlikely interrupting them. Junho used his physical strength and cunning to drive them away, taking advantage of the initial surprise to gain the upper hand. After a few tense minutes, the attackers fled, leaving behind only the sound of their footsteps echoing in the night. The woman, still trembling, looked at Junho with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. He helped her up, concerned about her condition. She murmured some words of thanks, but before he could ask who she was or what had happened, a luxurious car pulled up at the entrance of the alley. The woman quickly got in, casting one last look at Junho before the vehicle disappeared into the rain. Junho remained there for a moment, motionless, watching the spot where the car had been. He didn't know who she was or why she had been attacked. All he knew was that this brief interaction had touched something inside him. A feeling that something important had begun, even though he couldn't quite name it. With a heavy sigh, he adjusted the bag on his shoulders and went back home, unaware that this encounter would change his life forever. Days passed since the incident in the alley, and Junho's life seemed to have returned to normal. Or at least that's what he thought. A regular morning began like any other. He woke up before dawn, prepared a weak cup of coffee for himself, and left for another exhausting day of work. However, something unexpected was about to happen. As he walked along the sidewalk, two well-dressed men in impeccable suits appeared in front of him. They identified themselves as security personnel from a large corporation and politely asked to speak with him. Confused but with no alternative, Junho accompanied them to a shiny black car waiting on the corner. The ride was silent but charged with tension. Junho observed through the window as the car passed through parts of the city he rarely visited. Neighborhoods where the buildings were tall and bright, and the streets were always clean. Finally, they arrived at an imposing skyscraper that seemed to touch the sky. Upon entering the luxurious lobby, Junho felt completely out of place. Everything there was opulent: polished marble, golden chandeliers, and people dressed in clothes that probably cost more than what he earned in a year. He was led to a private room on the top floor, where he finally discovered the truth. Sitting behind an elegant desk was Sujin, the woman he had saved on that rainy night. She wore a sophisticated suit, but her eyes still held that glimmer of gratitude he had noticed in the alley. In a soft voice, she explained that she had spent days investigating the incident to find her savior. When she learned who he was, she decided to personally invite him to thank him. Sujin did not only express her gratitude but also offered him a job at her company as an administrative assistant. To Junho, it sounded like an impossible opportunity. He hesitated, uncomfortable with the idea of accepting something that might be seen as charity. But Sujin insisted, saying that she saw rare qualities in him: courage, integrity, and humility. Moreover, she knew he needed the money to support his family. After a long pause, Junho finally accepted, determined to use this opportunity to improve the lives of his mother and sister. At first, adapting to the new environment was a challenge. The office was a maze of organized desks, computer screens, and people talking on the phone in low, professional tones. Everyone seemed too busy to notice him, except for the curious glances they cast in his direction. Some colleagues whispered about him, speculating why someone like Sujin had hired such a simple young man. Others treated him coldly, as if he were an invisible threat to the established order. Despite this, Junho maintained his calm demeanor and worked diligently, determined to prove his worth. Sujin, on the other hand, began to notice something special about Junho. Raised in a world where everyone seemed to have ulterior motives, she was accustomed to dealing with flatterers and manipulators. But Junho was different. He didn't try to impress her, nor did he seek personal advantages. His sincerity was refreshing, almost like a breath of fresh air amidst the rarefied atmosphere of corporate rooms. Over the days, the two began to work more closely together, collaborating on projects and discussing strategies. Each interaction between them was marked by a genuine connection, something both felt but avoided naming. Junho, however, struggled against his own feelings. He knew there was a fine line between admiration and something deeper, but he was also aware of the abyssal difference between their realities. Sujin was a billionaire heiress, surrounded by luxury and privileges, while he could barely pay his bills. How could someone like him even dream of being by her side? These thoughts tormented him, but he kept them to himself, fearing that any display of emotion might compromise the respect he had earned. Sujin, for her part, faced her own internal conflicts. Since childhood, she had been molded to follow others' expectations, studying at the best schools, attending glamorous social events, and eventually taking over the family business. But upon meeting Junho, something inside her began to change. She realized that despite all the material comfort, something essential was missing from her life: authenticity. Junho represented everything she admired: simplicity, honesty, and silent strength. He made her question whether the path she was following was really what she wanted for herself. As the days turned into weeks, it became increasingly clear that their chance encounter in the alley had been more than just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of a journey neither of them could have foreseen. A journey that would lead them to explore not only the world around them but also their own hearts. The relationship between Junho and Sujin, as discreet as they tried to keep it, did not go unnoticed. In the corporate environment, where secrets are whispered in sterile hallways and intrigues spread like wildfire, the two quickly became the subject of speculation. To the company's board, the closeness between Soo-jin and such a common employee was a cause for concern. They feared it might tarnish the family's impeccable image and jeopardize the strategic alliances that sustained the corporate empire. Under pressure, Soo-jin was summoned to a tense meeting where she was presented with a list of suitors, all wealthy and influential businessmen, whom she was expected to marry to secure the company's future. Meanwhile, in the office, envious colleagues began spreading rumors about Jun-ho. Some said he had been hired out of pity. Others insinuated that he was using Soo-jin to climb the social ladder. The malicious words echoed through the hallways, reaching Jun-ho in fragmented but sufficiently painful ways. He knew there was nothing wrong with his intentions, but he also understood that his presence by Soo-jin's side could harm her. She was a powerful woman, surrounded by expectations and responsibilities, and he didn't want to be an obstacle in her path. Determined to protect her, even if it meant giving up something that barely had a chance to blossom, Jun-ho made the hardest decision of his life. He drafted his resignation letter and, without warning, left the corporate building for the last time. He returned to the modest neighborhood where he had always lived, resuming his simple routine of working at the restaurant and making nighttime deliveries. But no matter how much he tried to convince himself that it was the right choice, his heart couldn't forget Soo-jin. Every street he walked, every shadow he crossed at night seemed to remind him of her. He missed the sincere gleam in her eyes, the conversations they shared, and the feeling that, for a brief moment, he had belonged to a greater world. Soo-jin, on the other hand, felt lost without Jun-ho. In the days following his departure, she realized that something essential was missing from her life. She tried to continue as before, attending meetings, signing contracts, and following the board's guidelines, but everything felt empty. She began to question whether maintaining her position was worth the absence of something as genuine as what she felt for Jun-ho. That's when she made a radical decision. She confronted the company's board, resigning from the presidency and assuming the consequences of her choices. She knew it would shake her family and might even ruin her reputation, but it no longer mattered. All that mattered now was finding Jun-ho. Determined, Soo-jin traveled to the neighborhood where he lived. The contrast between that place and the luxurious world she knew was striking. The streets were narrow, the buildings worn down by time, and the air carried the smell of homemade food mixed with the sound of children playing. She felt a pang of humility, realizing how distant her life had been from the reality of so many people. Finally, after asking some local residents, she found Jun-ho. He was helping his mother water some plants in the small improvised garden in front of the apartment. When she saw her, Jun-ho froze. He hadn't expected Soo-jin to come looking for him, let alone there. The two stared at each other for a long moment, as if trying to decipher what the other was thinking. Then Soo-jin broke the silence. In a soft but firm voice she said, "I've never met anyone as genuine as you. You showed me that there is beauty in simplicity and strength in humility. I can no longer pretend to be happy without you." Jun-ho lowered his head, struggling against the emotions threatening to overflow. After a long sigh, he responded, "I've always admired you, Soo-jin, but I always thought there was no place for me in your world. I just wanted to protect you, even if it meant staying away." Soo-jin smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You don't need to change who you are to be by my side. It's exactly who you are that makes you special. And I don't want a world where you aren't in it." The two slowly approached each other, as if finally allowing their hearts to speak louder than the barriers that separated them. In that moment, they understood that, despite all the differences, they had found something rare and precious. A true connection, built not on wealth or status, but on authenticity and courage. Together, they decide that the future will no longer be dictated by others' expectations or the limits imposed by the past. Inspired by the genuine connection that united them, Soo-jin and Jun-ho begin to dream of something bigger. something that reflects who they are and the values they share. Sitting at the worn table in Junho's small apartment, surrounded by cups of hot tea and scattered papers, they outline plans for a new chapter in their lives. Soojin proposes opening a small community-based enterprise, an initiative that combines Junho's practical talents and deep understanding of the struggles faced by ordinary people with her financial resources and strategic vision. The idea is to create something that goes beyond profit, an organization that directly benefits the surrounding communities, especially those facing challenges similar to those that marked Junho's life. They want to offer real opportunities, from professional training programs to support for local small entrepreneurs. For Junho, this proposal is more than just a new business. It's a chance to transform his own story into something that can inspire others. He remembers the cold nights working 2 jobs, the bills that never seemed to decrease, and the feeling of being trapped in a seemingly impossible cycle to break. Now he sees the opportunity to help others find better paths. For Soojin, it's a way to rediscover her purpose. She finally understands that true impact doesn't lie in accumulating wealth, but in using her privileges to build something meaningful and lasting. The following months are dedicated to planning every detail of the project. They visit peripheral neighborhoods, talk to residents, and listen to stories of struggle and resilience. Junho takes charge of the operational side, ensuring everything is done with simplicity and efficiency, while Soojin uses her corporate experience to structure partnerships and attract investments. Despite the initial challenges, they work side by side, learning from each other and strengthening the bond between them even further. Junho and Soojin walk together through the same alley where it all began. But now that dark and damp place is completely transformed. The sun shines brightly, illuminating the once dark walls, and the ground is clean, as if the rain had washed away all traces of pain and fear. In the background, there are children playing and distant laughter, signs of a new life blossoming there. They stop for a moment, looking around as if they could clearly see how much they had changed since that fateful night. Soojin holds Junho's hand, their fingers intertwined, transmitting a silent confidence. They exchange a meaningful look, needing no words to express what they feel. Both know the road ahead won't be easy, but they also know they are ready to face it together. As they walk away from the alley, their shadows stretch under the sun, united as one. It's a clear symbol of how 2 such different people can meet, overcome obstacles, and create something beautiful out of chaos. They are no longer just Junho and Soojin. They are a team, a force capable of transforming not only their own lives but also the lives of those around them. This is proof that sometimes the simplest moments in life can trigger the greatest transformations. An apparently small gesture, like extending a hand to help someone in a dark alley, can change not only the destiny of a person but also your own. It's in acts of courage and kindness, even when no one is watching, that we find the power to rewrite our stories. Imagine for a moment, what if you were in Junho's place? What if that difficult decision to face the unknown, to act with compassion without expecting anything in return, were yours? How many times do we let opportunities to do something meaningful pass us by because we think we are too small, or that our actions don't matter? But the truth is that every choice, no matter how small it may seem, has the potential to create waves that touch lives far beyond what we can imagine. And you? What would you do if you were in Junho's position? Would you have the courage to face the danger, even knowing the consequences? Or would you have hesitated, thinking about the possible losses? Comment below and share your opinion. We want to know how this story resonated with you. Would you, like Junho, see beauty in simplicity and strength in humility? Subscribe to receive new videos.